The rain fell in heavy, unrelenting sheets, each droplet catching the glow of the street lamps before splattering onto the deserted sidewalk. Alina pulled her coat tighter around her as she hurried down the quiet street, her bag slung over one shoulder, boots splashing through shallow puddles. It was late, past 10, and the small cafe where she worked had finally closed after a long, exhausting day. Her mind was already drifting to the warmth of her apartment, the comfort of dry clothes, and the instant noodles she planned to make for dinner. She turned a corner and nearly stopped short. There, standing under a flickering streetlight, was a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and completely drenched, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. His suit clung to him as though he'd walked through the rain for hours. He wasn't holding an umbrella, and his expression was a strange mix of fatigue and detachment. His gaze wasn't on her, he seemed to be staring past everything, lost somewhere far away in his thoughts. Alina hesitated. Her neighborhood wasn't the safest at night, but something about him didn't trigger her usual instincts to cross the street. Instead, curiosity, mixed with a twinge of concern, nudged her forward. "Are you okay?" she called out, keeping her voice gentle but alert. The man turned his head slowly, as if the sound of her voice had pulled him from deep waters. His eyes were sharp, the kind that seemed to notice more than they let on, but right now they were clouded with exhaustion. He paused, almost as though he was deciding how much to tell her. "I lost my phone. Tried to get a cab, but none would stop. Every hotel I've passed is full because of some conference in town." His voice was deep, measured, but undeniably tired. Alina glanced at the nearly empty street. It was pouring harder now, and the wind was starting to bite through her coat. Leaving him there felt wrong. "I live a few blocks away," she said before she could overthink it. "If you need a place to dry off, you can, crash on my couch. Just for tonight." He studied her for a moment, as though weighing her sincerity. "Are you sure? You don't even know me." "Neither do the hotels, and they still take people in," she replied with a half smile. "Besides, you look like you're going to freeze if you stay out here." After a beat, he nodded. "All right, thank you." They walked in silence through the rain, her small apartment building finally coming into view. Inside, she handed him a towel and rummaged for a spare blanket while he shrugged out of his soaked jacket. Even without the rain, he carried an air of refinement, his movements were deliberate, precise. "Tea," she offered. "Tea would be perfect," he said, his voice softening. As the kettle hissed, they exchanged small talk. He said his name was Daniel, no last name, and that he was in the city for business. He didn't elaborate, and Alina didn't press. She told him about her cafe job, her dream of opening her own bakery someday, and the ridiculous landlord who still hadn't fixed a leaky bathroom faucet. He listened intently, like her words were worth more than idle chatter. When the tea was ready, she handed him a steaming mug and pointed to the couch. "You can sleep here. Bathroom's down the hall. I'll be in my room if you need anything." He thanked her with a sincerity that made her chest warm. "You didn't have to do this." "Maybe not," she said, "but I wanted to." The next morning, when Alina stepped out of her bedroom, the blanket was folded neatly, the mug washed, and Daniel was gone. All that remained was a small note on the counter: "Thank you for your kindness, D." She smiled faintly, wondering if she'd ever see him again. 2 days later, the cafe buzzed with unusual energy. Her manager, who never cared about appearances, was suddenly obsessing over table arrangements and the perfect polish on the silverware. "Big corporate meeting today," he whispered. "The new CEO of Lincrest Enterprises is coming. Apparently, he's one of the most powerful men in the industry, owns half the buildings in this district. We're catering their meeting." Alina didn't think much of it until she was sent to deliver an urgent coffee order to the conference room upstairs. Balancing the tray, she stepped inside, and froze. Standing at the head of the table, speaking with calm authority, was Daniel. Only now he wasn't a rain-soaked stranger. He was dressed in a flawlessly tailored navy suit, his hair perfectly in place, his presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. Their eyes met across the table. His expression didn't falter, but a faint spark of recognition passed through his gaze. Then, almost imperceptibly, the corner of his mouth lifted. Alina set the coffee down and slipped out quickly, her heart racing. So, Daniel wasn't just in the city for business. He was the business. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She couldn't stop replaying the night she'd invited him into her apartment, the way he'd listened to her dreams, the warmth in his eyes when she'd handed him tea. How different would things have been if she'd known who he really was? Later that evening, just as she was about to leave, the cafe door swung open, and there he was. No entourage, no formal air, just Daniel, holding an umbrella and looking entirely out of place in her little corner of the world. "Can we talk?" he asked. They walked to a quiet park nearby, the air damp but no longer raining. He explained that he had flown in unexpectedly that night and had left his phone in the car that took him from the airport. He'd been walking to a hotel when she found him. He hadn't told her who he was because he'd wanted Just for one night, to be seen as a person, not a title. And you, he said, turning to her with that same unreadable depth in his eyes, treated me like one. You didn't ask for anything. You just helped. Alina didn't know what to say. I didn't do it expecting anything back. I know, he said, and there was something almost vulnerable in the way he looked at her. That's why I'm here. I want to repay that kindness. She laughed softly. I don't need repaying. Maybe not, but I think you deserve an opportunity. He slipped a business card into her hand. Come by my office tomorrow. Let's talk about your bakery. She stared at him, speechless. She had told him about that dream in passing, never expecting it in her industry was offering to make it real. The next day, she stepped into the gleaming glass tower of Lincrest Enterprises. Daniel greeted her in his private office, floor-to-ceiling windows, the skyline stretched out behind him. He listened as she nervously explained her ideas, her plans, her fears about financing. He asked questions, thoughtful ones, the kind that made her realize he was genuinely interested. By the end of the meeting, he had arranged for her to meet with his investment team. I believe in your vision, he said simply. And I trust you. Over the weeks that followed, their paths crossed more often, sometimes in formal boardrooms, sometimes over coffee at the cafe. Each time, she saw more of the man behind the title, the one who had sat on her couch with a mug of tea and listened like her words mattered. And each time, she couldn't help but wonder if the night they met had been fate, or just a twist of chance that changed everything. Because what had started as a single act of kindness was slowly becoming something far greater, something that neither of them could ignore.